What's up everyone, Vu of Vu Films again, and I am back with another idiotic video for you to watch. Of course, Sony just had their little April 30th announcement on streaming, or whatever that stupid video PowerPoint was, which was completely pointless because they actually reserved a date. They actually pushed back their original April 20th date to April 30th for that piece of trash PowerPoint video presentation that, if anyone actually cared to see all that information, could have just went to Sony's website all this time, or B&H Photo to see all of, or most of those products being available to order. And they're clearly completely out of touch, because during that whole PowerPoint presentation there was not one whoosh zoom transition to entertain our visual sensories. Stupid jokes aside, this just shows me that Sony is really just completely out of touch with their creators. All these tube douche influencers they have going to their camera cams and their Sony Condo, whatever you want, all these stupid little get-togethers they have with all these YouTubers, and yet they still can't figure out what we want. The only company right now that really knows what creators really want is Canon. Video creators, obviously, with the R5 and the upcoming R6 announcement with its 8K, 4K 60, 4K 120, 10-bit 422 internal. We all know the gangster specs, and we're all clear on that. Sony, on the other hand, is stuck with pleasing photographers. And yes, most consumers out there, there's more photographers out there than videographers. But if you were to ask any photographer right now if they're completely satisfied with the tools they have, knowing that they have one of the cameras already available for sale right now, I think the majority of them would be extremely satisfied. You have cameras like pretty much any new camera you could think of, right? Nikon Z6, Z7, Canon EOS R, Sony a7 III, Sony a7R III, Sony a7R4, or any of these new cameras that are currently out available for sale, even at very discounted prices at this point, are more than what 99% of photographers need. If they need to do sports, they have the A9 II, Canon 1DX2, Canon 1DX3, whatever the hell Nikon has for their sports camera. We all know sports photographers are satisfied. Most photographers I ever work with, whether it be in commercial work, weddings, they don't even use their photography cameras to its full capability. A lot of people with Canon 5D Mark IV, a lot of these wedding photographers are still doing focus recomposing, which means they take their camera, they focus on a spot, and then they compose to where they want it to be, versus actually using like the dual pixel autofocus system in their camera technology available for them, or eye autofocus for that matter. A lot of photographers don't even know about these things. They're not even using their camera to its full potential. Meanwhile, us videographers over here, all we really want from Sony is 4K 60 10-bit. A lot of us aren't looking for RAW. A lot of us aren't looking for any of these crazy specs. Even photography, for that matter, most people know how good the a7R3 is, a7R4 is with the 61 megapixels, which, mind you, at $3,000 competes against medium format Hasselblad and the Fujifilm medium format camera at a $3,000 price tag, full frame. Most Sony photographers are completely satisfied with the Sony a7 III. The Sony a7 III is more than most photographers could even handle. I have an a7R III. I'll tell you this right now, I barely use it for photography. It's literally my backup camera for videography. I'm always picking up the a7 III because 24, 25 megapixels is more than enough for my use, more than enough for me to crop in and still have a very sharp image. Videographers, we're left with just complete I've always said this, the 4K 24 frames per second video quality in the Sony system is great. Even at 8-bit, there's plenty of dynamic range. Definitely colors start breaking down, especially like on these intense blue areas here. Sometimes if I'm pushing the grade, but generally speaking, it's usable. But we do want some more flexibility. We want that 10-bit. We want to be able to shoot 4K 60 just in case we want to use some slow motion when we're going into editing. And we can crop in and out without too much loss of resolution. But to do slow motion right now, we're relegated to 1080 8-bit at 60p at only at 50 megabits per second. And even though that file is very usable, it is arguably, in my opinion, better than what Canon offers at 1080 90 megabits per second, whatever trash that they have. It is still not good enough. I mean, if you ask any Sony shooter right now, I'm pretty sure most of them wants to have that option of 4K 60 and at least 10-bit. Meanwhile, Canon is doing 8K, maybe even 6K on their new cameras, 4K 60, 4K 120, all internal, 10-bit 422, even raw internal 8K. 8K. That is ridiculous. And I'm gonna be honest with you right now, I'm not really looking into getting that Canon right now, even as much as Sony is completely trash as of right now. It's just completely doing nothing, completely sitting back, being quarantined as if all of Sony has COVID. They're all just sitting there being quarantined. It's unbelievable how out of touch they are. And if they are working on a Sony a7 III, at least let people know what they're doing. At least maybe give like a little teaser. At least maybe give an announcement of what they're developing, what specs they're looking to put into this camera, versus just kind of leaving everyone up to the air, leaving every Sony D-bag user drooling over the EOS R5. I myself has pre-ordered a Fuji X-T4, and I'm completely satisfied using that system if I have to for 4K 60. Like I said, I don't need 8-bit. I don't need all this other extra stuff because I'm not trying to deal with massive file sizes. And I'm sure most videographers that shoot run and gun, shoot weddings and stuff aren't trying to deal with just huge file sizes of like 4K raw, 8K raw. That's just a huge expense for something that people won't even really notice. Even as a videographer, we might not even notice it ourselves, the difference between like what 8K is capable of and what a good clean 4K is capable of, as long as it's well shot, well lit, the overall production is well edited. And even if you look at with the whole 8K Canon stuff and the just having 4K, it's almost equivalent to like an a7 III and an a7R III. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people bought the a7 III and they realized that these 42 megapixel file size is just way too much. It's taking a lot more time to process. I'm not even like taking photos that really require that resolution. The a7 III is fine, and it's $1,000 to $1,500 cheaper. And the same thing with a7R4. Like there's a very limited amount of people who actually need 61 megapixels on their camera. And at the same time, on the videography side, there's a very limited amount of people, or if any at all, who really needs 8K for anything. 4K right now is very sharp and completely enough. I mean, I've taken some screenshots of 4K and it looks like a very high megapixel photo. So if it's gonna cost a lot more just to have 8K, I'd rather just spend less money, such as $1,700 for a Fuji X-T4 and have 4K 60 10-bit, which is all I really wanted to begin with. I don't know what this video is about. It's pretty much me ranting about how trashy and how crappy Sony has been. I don't know what their goal is at this point. I've been a very huge supporter of Sony. I have a bunch of Sony bodies, Sony lenses. I'm shooting on a Sony camera right now. More lenses sitting around here, just on my desk, out of frame. I mean, this is just, I don't even know how to explain their thought process of having this, for lack of a better word, idiotic April 30th announcement of just general, like, who cares about your massive cinema camera? Canon has a small handheld camera that does more than any of your big cinema cameras can, to be quite frank. I mean, this is not gonna do me any good trashing Sony right now. you know, with trying to get a B Alpha sponsorship. But yeah, you know, that's every YouTube douche bag's dream, is to get that Sony Alpha sponsorship and to be able to review their 20mm f1.8 lens and stuff like that, and be the, you know, first to be able to post on YouTube this review of how great the lens is, and you should buy the lens, whatever. That's every YouTube douche's dream. But apparently I'm throwing that dream away. I'm just completely trashing them, and they deserve it, because photographers have everything they need. If you're a photographer, you tell me, do you not have everything you need in a camera at this day and age to do everything you want to do, to have all the flexibility you want? And that's the key word here, guys. Flexibility. Photographers have everything they need to do any type of photography they need out of any camera right now that's available for sale, under $4,000, under $3,000. Videographers, you know, to get what we need, we're gonna have to, most of us will probably, until recently with Canon, you know, full frame and all that stuff. Now, before that, you know, you'd have to get like a rig, C300, C200, FX7, FX9 or something. But now Canon is gonna have this handheld hybrid camera where you could shoot photos just as good as any camera out right now, but now video quality that rivals with autofocus and all that. I know the S20H is there, but that autofocus is trash, so I don't really consider it. But I'm telling you, Sony is lost. Canon, if that ESR 5 is under 4,000, as a lot of Canon fanboys have been commenting to me, then dude, I know a lot of dudes are already switching back to Canon. I've never used Canon before. I'm a Sony fanboy since I started this whole journey as being a videographer, photographer. Back in 2014, I bought a Sony, and I've always been a Sony user since. It has not really let me down, but you know, once once you're able to see what 4K 60 and 10 extra bit depth and color can do, you realize what you lose out on. For these videos, I'm using just 4K 24 8-bit, whatever's available, and it looks fine for talking head videos like this. But when I film a wedding, for example, and I edit it and I post it onto Vimeo, and I'm watching it on the big screen, the 1080 footage I get with slow motion does not look as good as my competitors that have been using 4K 60 on like their GH5 or their Fujifilm cameras. So or even their Canon 1DX Mark II. You know, Sony users don't have that availability right now. So Sony is just really out of touch, guys. I just have no other ways to explain to you. I have no idea where the Sony a7SIII is. The rumor has it they're going to announce something in June, and the camera should be available late summer. We don't know about all that stuff. I mean, Sony can't even make a new camera without COVID-19, yet alone with COVID-19 all over the place. So, anyways, guys, I don't even know what that video was. I just wanted to discuss my thoughts on the Sony August 38 announcement, and which was pretty much nothing. So I'm just kind of just talking out of my brain, my thoughts. So yeah, until next time, guys, lighten up.